Worse, if all the unpaid checks in the system were presented for payment, this would add a further $500 million to the deficit for the month of May. This will then take our total deficit in this month to $4.42 billion for this month. And therefore, the Minister of Finance will need to find funding. So while we give you the reality of the situation, we will fix it. We have the plans.
So, in a press conference yesterday, the newly minted Prime Minister of the beautiful twin island of Trinidad and Tobago came out yesterday and said, look, the kitty is empty. The treasury is empty. There's no money in the piggy bank. And people can look at this in two ways. People can look at this as that, look, she's coming out now to protect herself, to say, look, a lot of these things that I promised during the political campaign, if I can't deliver, is because there's no money in the kitty. Do you think that this is a political strategy, or is Trinidad really broke? Let's talk about it. Okay, so the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, as I said, so she came in and her team is together. Everything was done like in a rapid pace, and the finance team and everyone is together. But now she's saying that they're looking at a month-to-month deficit, and the deficit that was quoted was over $4 billion so far for this month in debt. And the important thing to know is that every country in the world, especially developed country and developing country, every country in the world is in debt. America is the most indebted country in the world. So debt is not necessarily a bad thing, but there's good debt and there's bad debt. It's just like, for example, like if I have a personal debt of like $1 million, but with that debt, it's like a mortgage coming out of it, it's a car payment, it's like university tuition for the kids and stuff like that, you would consider that as good debt, as opposed to just going online and buying the latest jewelry and fast cars and stuff like that. So that is important to note. So every country is in debt. But one of the things that they say, like, men lie, women lie, but numbers never lie. So I decided to do some research, and what I'm going to do is to compare Trinidad and Tobago with Jamaica. And the reason why I'm doing that is because in the West Indies, those are the two islands with the most population. So you get more of an accurate picture of the debt. And so let's go. So Trinidad and Tobago. So 2024, we're looking at Trinidad and Tobago debt to GDP ratio. So Trinidad and Tobago 2024 was recorded 64.5% debt to GDP. But here's the kicker now. So that was an increase of 5.18% from the previous year of 2023, which it was a 5.938 GDP, debt to GDP ratio. And when you look at some of the world's economists, that they would say, for example, for a developed country or developing country, a rate that is good, it's good to stay within like a 60% debt to GDP rate. In that 60% debt to GDP ratio, countries are able to finance their debt, to pay off their debt without any austerity measure, without cutting like public funding in terms of like teachers in schools, security officers, and keeping up with the healthcare. So that, according to most of the economists, that is a good place to be, 60%. So Trinidad and Tobago being at 64.5 is not a bad thing. The bad thing is that when you compare where Trinidad and Tobago is now compared to where they were like years ago. So every year so far, we're seeing an increase of like roughly about 5% adding to that rate. So 60% is not bad. And the debt, Trinidad debt, which the overall debt is, I'm seeing here, $16.458 billion. And remember, Trinidad, remember those numbers. Trinidad, the population is a little bit over 1.5 million. and the debt is $16.458 billion. So let's compare that to Jamaica now. So Jamaica debt to GDP rate, remember I said Trinidad was 64.5. So Jamaica's debt to GDP rate is 64.60. And that is Jamaica's debt to GDP rate as of 2024. And we see that it's very similar. Jamaica's debt to GDP compared to Trinidad debt to GDP, very similar. The kicker here, the reason why this is so important comparing both of them, is that when you compare Trinidad and Tobago to Jamaica, Jamaica is heading in the right direction and Trinidad and Tobago is pretty much going the opposite direction. And the reason why this is because when you compare Jamaica debt to GDP in 2012, Jamaica debt to GDP rate in 2012 was 144%. That is when your country is like pretty much collapsing. 144% from in 2012. And you see fast forward in 2024, that's what, 12 years later. I don't know how they did it, and I don't think people give the Andrew Holness administration enough credit. Now we see it at 64.60, the debt to GDP rate. So Jamaica is in a good place, and Jamaica overall debt is $13 billion. And Jamaica, the population of Jamaica is almost double the one of Trinidad and Tobago. So those are interesting numbers because Trinidad and Tobago with half the population of Jamaica, but they are more in debt than Jamaica with 16 billion as opposed to Jamaica with $13 billion. So those are just some numbers that I was crunching. So because I know in the Caribbean, sometimes when we vote and when we talk about politics, we don't talk about numbers. We are die-hearted PNM, so like nothing the UNC does is ever going to please us, or we are die-hearted UNC, and no matter what the other party does, it's not going to satisfy us. So these numbers are very important when we're going to see what the new Prime Minister is saying and where we're going to judge our performance. It's very important to look at these numbers and to know that Trinidad and Tobago were heading in the opposite direction over the last 20 years. They're heading in the wrong direction. So that is important to note. So this was what the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago had to say about the finances of the country. Let's take a look.
And this is what we had warned about in the entire election campaign. That is why I'm telling you today, I am not surprised, and you should not be surprised. We said they had drained the treasury. We knew that coming in, so we are not caught by surprise. So we were ready with the plans, policies and programs to fix it, and fix it we will. We will. So as we are, cash flow, we have a deficit of 4.42 billion. How are we going to fill that hole? How are we going to fill that financial hole? Not H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. It's a big hole. How? This is a delicate situation. It means that our country was being run month to month, literally living first on the overdraft at the bank. You remember when they told us we were running on fumes in 2010, 2015? They had maxed out that overdraft, they told us, running on fumes. Nothing was further from the truth. Now it's not about maxing out and running on fumes. They don't even have the fumes. They did not even leave fumes.
Okay, so that was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So guys, sound off in the comment section and let me know what are your thoughts about this. Do you trust the UNC government to bring back Trinidad and Tobago on a level that it was in the past? As I said, Trinidad and Tobago was the first real success story in the West Indies. Do you believe that this UNC government could put Trinidad and Tobago on a trajectory to go back to those glory days? Sound off in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.